The Tiger Cats are celebrating the 1999 Grey Cup Championship team at the home opener on Father's Day, Sunday, June 16th. Take Dad to celebrate the Grey Cup champs. Go to ticats.ca/tickets or call 905-547-CATS.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Ticats Today with Steve Milton.
It's Wednesday, June 12th. This is Ticats Today, and I'm Steve Milton. In preparation for Sunday night's attraction-packed home opener against the visiting Saskatchewan Roughriders, the Ticats were back on the turf at Tim Hortons Field for day one today, although they did have what's called a day zero. That means an extra day of practice on Monday. Today we'll be talking to Scott Milanovich about the new quarterback from his own alma mater, whom the team has brought onto the practice roster, Taulia Tagovailoa, whose last name you'll recognize since his brother Tua of the Dolphins is one of the NFL's biggest stories. But Taulia has credentials of his own, and most of the quarterbacking records at the University of Maryland are held by either him or his new head coach. We'll also discuss how the Ticat offensive line graded higher than any line in the league on opening day weekend, despite that loss in Calgary, and was named to the honor roll, as was running back James Butler, and we'll hear from him as well. And as a special treat, we'll end with a long parlor room dialogue with Dave Hack, a five-time East All-Star right tackle who was a key part of the Ticats' 1999 Grey Cup Championship win in Vancouver. The Ticats will honor that team to recognize its 25th anniversary prior to Sunday night's game, and at last count, at least 24 members of the squad, including Ticats President of Football Ops Orlando Steinhauer, will be on hand. Now, not many people remember that the 1999 Ticats got off to a poor start, but caught fire at the right time, and they absolutely owned the trenches in the latter part of that year. Hack, Carl Coulter, and the rest of the offensive line set a league record for the fewest sacks allowed in a season, 7. That's a whole season. Think on that for a moment, and hang around to hear all about it and what it was like to win that cup in front of for the Hamilton fans. Now, those Hamilton fans and football chat rooms across the entire continent are talking about this week's signing of Tagovailoa, even though he is currently the number 4 quarterback, and that he's on the practice roster and still has to learn the many, many nuances of the Canadian game. He took some reps on Monday, but not today. Here's Milanovich on Tagovailoa.
Obviously, the guy was, I think, the Big Ten all-time passing leader. I've watched his film. He's talented. He's a passer with ability to move and escape and create. What he becomes, I think, is, still out there to be determined. I've been through this before with a number of quarterbacks that ended up starting, and the most important part really is to be sitting in and listening and watching and seeing how it's done and learning the game. And usually it's after year one that your opportunity presents itself.
There hasn't been this much interest in the reserve quarterback here since Johnny Manziel, and he's an alumnus of Maryland. Almost all of the quarterbacking records for the Terrapins were held by Tagovailoa or Scott Milanovich himself.
I think he has them all. I don't know. I think he has them all, doesn't he? I told him, I wrote him a letter last year or 2 years ago whenever he broke one of the bigger ones, and I don't think he ever got it. But, records are meant to be broken, but I'd say he more than broke them. He shattered everything, I think.
And Bo Levi Mitchell made sure Tagovailoa felt welcome when he got here.
Yeah, I've already had some conversations with him. You got to remember, he's, obviously the first thing you're going to say is who his brother is, but the kid got here on his own merit, and he's a hell of a quarterback. I watched him play a little bit in Maryland, and he has a lot of energy too, which I love. But the first thing I said was, hey, Taylor's going to be in the film room at 5:15. Me and Frost are going to be in the weight room. If you want to meet us there, if you want to meet Taylor in the film room, we're going to be here. And he said, I got you, fam. And he was here and he was working. So I can tell he's a worker. I think he's going to put the time in, and just looking forward to kind of giving everything I can.
Speaking of Mitchell, he repeated Wednesday what he said after Sunday's 32-24 loss in Calgary, that it took him a while to shake off the rust, that he liked his footwork and his arm work other than a couple of times under pressure, that he reverted to some bad habits, and that he listened to Milanovich, who had urged him all offseason to run, to open up space, and for better arm angles. Dave Dickinson of Calgary, his head coach there, had challenged Mitchell the same way, but he'd run less and less each year, and I'll quote him on this, probably just me being unwilling to change. You have a couple of bad seasons, though, you make changes, he said. And he had 36 massive running yards on Sunday night. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but they came packing first downs and field position. Mitchell also talked about the team having accountability to each other and not getting angry when approached by teammates with constructive criticism, which apparently happens a lot, he said. And he addressed the holes the offensive line was opening on the runs, which helped James Butler get his big yardage. The CFL releases a weekly honor roll from Pro Football Focus, PFF nicknamed, which breaks down action on the field and uses 200 data points to come up with a grading out of 100. I don't always understand it, but the films did show something positive about the Ticats, obviously, about their offensive line, which blocked for Butler's league-high 119 yards. It was ranked highest at 71% of all the offensive lines in the league last weekend, and Brandon Ravenberg, the guard, scored 76.6%, the most of any offensive lineman. Ravenberg and Butler were also on the individual honor roll, which recognizes the top 10 performances by players in a week. Now, Butler's mother, Cornelia, will drive over from Chicago with a friend to watch Sunday's game here. She saw 3 or 4 games last year, and Butler feels that he and the team need to be better at home, not just for her, but for the fans, than they were last year when they went only 3-6 at Tim Hortons Field.
I just think we got to start fast. We got to play off our crowd, play off our environment. I feel like sometimes we just kind of came and just tried to muscle it, use the crowd, use the energy, use home field advantage. I felt we never really used home field advantage like that this last year. So hopefully this year we can feed off the crowd, feed off each other, feed offense, feed off defense, defense feeds off offense, and special teams. We just got to all come together as a collective and just believe.
Those home fans are rabid, they have high expectations, and they're knowledgeable. Mitchell was pointing all of that out today. And they'll be revved up by the special pregame presentation celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Grey Cup winners, many of whom will be present. One of those will be Dave Hack, whose quarterback at the University of Maryland back in the early 1990s was Scott Milanovich. Oh, those Venn diagrams. I caught up with Dave Hack today, so sit back and listen to 20 entertaining minutes of incisive reminiscing about the 1999 Grey Cup. Here's our discussion. Well, I'm very proud and very happy to welcome back an old friend and a longtime Ticats star, Dave Hack, the right tackle on the 99 Grey Cup team and the 98 team that maybe could have won then, maybe should have won the 98 Grey Cup. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
And you're coming up here this weekend. There's a bunch of you coming up. You're going to be honored right before the home opener. Just before the home opener, they're going to recognize and unfortunately for Ticat fans, fortunately for you guys, the last Ticat team to win a Grey Cup, and that is sadly 25 years ago. Dave, what do you remember about that year?
Thanks, Steve. It went fast. The 25 years, it's kind of like a book, right? You could open the book back up and it's, the August, September, October of 99. Just a great group of people. We kind of came together. I remember Coach Lancaster talking to us after the 98 Grey Cup, just talking about how, you think you're young, you think you're going to be here every year. And, after, losing such a big game, and it wasn't a big speech, but, we kind of took it to heart. And when we came back in 98 or 99, the training camp, we had a good training camp. We actually did not start off the year very good. And then we kind of got into our flow. And then just at the end of that season, we were hot, we were healthy. Again, a great group of people that worked well together and had a lot of fun together too.
Well, and people may not remember that you did not win the division that year. You did not finish first in the division. It was because of that poor start, and it was often because of losses to Montreal. And you ended up taking them in the Eastern Final. And maybe let's talk about that just for a second. That's one of the most unusual plays, and it looked like you had lost the game. But I think Joe Higgins was sent in as a was he playing slot back or something like that?
It was our short yard. It was a short yardage package that Joe had been in part of. Joe was a gifted athlete. He, was a defensive player, linebacker, was also on all of our special teams, and then was on our short yards on offense. And it was I forgot the name of the play, but it was a fake handoff to a lob pass to Joe, and Joe grabbed the ball over 2 other guys, and we ended up scoring on the next play or so. But it was a big play. It was a big play in that game, and obviously pushed us in the right direction.
Gave you basically the lead that you didn't surrender with just a little more than a minute to go. And I should describe that play. Baron Miles, who's a Hall of Famer, had it sniffed out. And I have said to Ron Lancaster many times. The late Ron Lancaster was the coach who called that play. I think he called it linebacker eligible. And that was his nickname for it. And I said, I thought it was the worst call I'd ever seen on a short yardage play because Baron Miles had sniffed out. But Joe Higgins reached over the back of him. And remember, this is a linebacker. Reached over the back of him and pulled the ball up, and it kept the drive going. And then you scored, I think, Ron Williams. So that team, the offensive line, people forget that may have been one of the greatest offensive lines in Ticat history. Certainly since the glory years of Barrow and Mosca and Kelly and all of those guys, in my mind, and perhaps the most underrated. You guys set a record that year for CFL for the fewest sacks, 7. There's been 7 in games, single games since then, and before that. You probably played in some games for the Ticats in which you gave up 7 sacks.
I'm sure there were a couple of tough ones there, but we had a really good group, and Carl was the magnet to all that, right? He set us in our positions and got the calls out to us, but was a great leader. Carl and Calvin Tiggle off of that team were 2 of the best leaders I've ever been around. Carl just made you feel like a friend and made you felt like you fit in. We had a good group of guys who worked well together. Seth was really underrated too. Our left tackle didn't say a lot.
Seth Dipman, yes.
Did a ton, was always working, always doing extra, drills and doing different footwork things by himself and working out. And then you had Tim Princeton and Chris Burns were, our guards, and they were, they brought a lot to us too. But, Carl was really special. Having Carl Coulter as our leader and our center was a big thing. Carl allowed us all to kind of be who we were and, play to our best and be kind of who we needed to be. So it was a fun group, and then having Danny Mack as our quarterback obviously is a special player, because Danny throws the ball quickly because that's what he does, right? He's going to throw the ball fast and make decisions. And then we had 2 backs, with Ronnie and with Ronald Williams, our big bruising back, and then you had Eric Lapointe, who was a burner. I don't think people realized how fast Eric was. It was really nice.
How good he was.
Yeah. How good. So we had the 1-2 punch with those 2 guys. And our receivers were great too. You had Andrew, you had Mike Morelli, Darren, and Corey Grant, and Tony Akins. Those guys were, and Archie, Archie Amison. We had a really good group of people on offense.
Yeah, on that offense, that offensive passing group, they ran a lot of that over under. They really knew how to clear for each other, right, on either side, and they didn't. There wasn't as much sort of wide side, short side. I mean, there was guys sort of played left and right more a little in those days than they do today, right?
Yeah, and it was I just remember Stack Reed, and that was a play that Darren and Andrew really ran well. The stack read. Essentially, they would come to a stack, and the guy behind would read, and then they would just kind of play off of each other. And they just did a fantastic job with it.
Unbelievable, and it helped to be, for the most part, veterans too, right? To have that kind of feel for each other. What do you remember about the Grey Cup game? I mean, that one you'd lost to Calgary the year before when you probably allowed them just a little bit too much time.
Yeah.
When you had taken the lead and they marched down the field, very heartbreaking for everybody that year. But the next year in Vancouver, there was no denying you guys. I think you were up 21-0 at the half or something like that.
The focus was different. Guys, I think, realized how close we were the year before, and to leave, Winnipeg not winning, that was kind of a big thing for us. But, we went out there a little bit focused. I think we were, a little bit better of a team than we were the year before. And, the game the week was a nice week in Vancouver. And, the game, a lot of big plays in the first half with our defense doing a great job, as they always did. And then Danny and Darren really getting things going. Was fun. I mean, we really, Calgary, I think, came out and scored right at the start of the second half, but no, we were really never in a position where they were gonna get close to us.
Now, Darren Flutie had 2 touchdown catches in that game, and as you said, one of them really put the game away. But I think the other one did as well. And then Ron, your running back, scored right off the top of the game, basically, and he'd had 3 touchdowns the week before in Montreal. So, I mean, you had that great. Nobody was stopping you on short yardage in those days, and especially with the kind of line you had and the running backs, right?
No, it was the short yardage was fun because it's when we brought in Mike Campbell and Franco Rocca were our tight ends, and then you had Warren Muzika and Jarrett Smith were our fullbacks, and Dan Pronick was actually in there too. So was kind of an inverted wishbone, and we just would batter ram guys, and those guys were great.
Now, anybody of a certain age, and I would think that would be maybe under 35, will not know much about that game. But one of the great catches in Ticat history, I mean, the greatest catch in my time was Tony Champion 1989, but maybe the second was Darren in the end zone. Were you able to see that, how he caught it with one hand? Were you able to see that from your vantage point?
I didn't see it. I mean, obviously I saw the results of it, but I did not see the catch. But no, I mean, I've seen it since. No, it was Darren really had that guy inside out, and then, put his arm bar up and was able to reach out with his right hand and make that catch. So Darren was a gifted player. I mean, he was really a gifted player. He and Danny had such a great combination and coordination with each other. It was fun to play with those guys. Yeah,
Darren always got to practice. Looked like he just got out of bed, and ended up every second of every practice and every game was unbelievable on the field, right?
I mean, when the switch turned on for him, he was ready to go.
He was ready to go. It had been a while since the Ticats had won a Grey Cup, 1986, 13 years, and they'd won one in every decade of the 20th century, and it came down to the last game of the 20th century for you guys to cap that. What was that feeling like?
Well, Ozzie brought it up. So Paul Balderson brought it up in the game about the Ticats winning a Grey Cup in every decade. So it was something that I hadn't really thought of, but we knew that there were still some guys from the 86 team that were still around. So we would kind of connect with those guys. So it was a pretty fun thing. The CFL is a special thing, and I follow the Ticats not super closely, but I follow them, and to see them they've been to the game but have not had the success in the game. It's you want them to win. I mean, that's I'm a Ticat and I want them to win. So I'm hopeful that they're going to be pulling in the right direction this year, and they've got some good people. Scott is a former teammate of mine from Maryland, so I'm pulling for him too. Let's
talk about. Yeah. Sorry, Dave. Let's talk about that for a moment. I don't think people realize, and I had actually forgotten that you played with Scott Milanovich, is the Scott you're referring to at Maryland. What was he like there? You guys were a year apart, I think, at Maryland.
Scott was a year behind me. Yep. So I was a redshirt freshman when he came as a true freshman. He was a gifted player. I think he was from Butler, Pennsylvania, but he was one of the top recruits that a year behind me. They redshirted him. He was a guy that who knows if he would have played, his true freshman year, maybe things would have been different for us at Maryland. But he's a heck of a player. He was not only a great quarterback, he was a great punter. He was on an All-American team as a punter. So he had a lot to do, and, just watching some of the games, his control, the management of the game. We ran a run and shoot similar to the CFL offense where it's a lot of guys, moving and in motion, and he really, handled that well and was a great teammate and was a, good guy to have around, was a heck of a quarterback.
You grew up in the Buffalo area, basically, at least across the lake, right? And
yes.
How aware were you of CFL before that?
I was aware.
Were you at all?
Yeah, no, big time. So we, during the summer, we down here, we had, ABC, NBC, CBS, and we also had CBC and CTV. We would get Maple Leaf Wrestling on CTV, but we would get the CFL games during the summer. And, I can remember watching Edmonton play Saskatchewan, thinking it was the Eagles versus the Packers. And then my dad explained to me what it was. And so, no, I was well aware of it.
And then you had a shot with the Bills, and then or tryout with the Bills. And I think, and then was Birmingham that you did a little bit, had a look-see anyways at the CFL, and then you came here.
Yeah. So that's kind of, that's always people, right? The connection to people. So when I tried out for the Dolphins and I got cut, and I went to Birmingham, the CFL team. And the reason I did is because they ran the run and shoot offense, which was the same offense we had run at Maryland. And the offensive coordinator was John Jenkins. So John ran the same offense we ran. And so all the plays, the calls, everything was the same. So they had a couple guys get hurt and they brought me in. I was on the practice squad. The guys got healthy. They didn't need me. But when the team folded, John becomes the offensive coordinator in Hamilton. So when they had a couple of injuries in Hamilton, that's how I got brought into Hamilton in '96.
I think there was a short turnaround from you coming up into playing, right?
Yeah. Oh, no. So I remember Mike McCarthy calling me saying, if you can be here, but it was a Tuesday or whatever day of the week, must have been their day 2, or it was probably day 3. Hey, if you can be here by 12 o'clock, you can be at a meeting. We can get you to practice, see how it works, and maybe you can play. I ended up playing that week.
Yeah. And it's split 3 games, I think, that year. And then you really took off the next year. Now you came here in what, 96, right?
Yeah, I was there started for 3 weeks, was on the IR for a week, and then that was the end of the year. The season was over.
The end of the year. And then the next year,
97, I didn't come back. So I didn't come back up in 97.
Oh, right. Okay. So you didn't come back in 97. You didn't play again until 98.
So 98 was when yep.
So you didn't play on that 2-16 team.
I did not. I did not.
So what are you thinking when you're coming back to a team that went 2-16, changed the coach, and what are you thinking then?
Well, I was just thinking of a place to kind of find a home, right? It was, I'm trying to think how it went, but it was, I'd been kicked around a little bit in my NFL tryouts and was really looking to find a place. Hamilton was great for me because I could drive there. In fact, during that training camp at Brock, I drove back and forth for the 2 weeks of training camp. And for me, that was a big thing. Was the training camp. And Ron, when we first came into that first meeting, Ron Lancaster just talked about how, we're going to try and set our team. And once we have our team, if barring injuries, we're going to try and keep that team the whole season, which, you looking back on it was kind of a neat thing. You don't really have that in sports, but that's kind of the loyalty that Ron had to his guys. And so it was a neat time to be be part of the group. But for me, it was close. So that was a big thing for me. And the guys really made you feel like part of the group. Like some of the training camp shenanigans were fun, and the guys really worked hard to make you feel like you were part of the team.
Now you're using a teacher type word. You're an educator now, and you're an athletic director in Orchard Park of the high school. Is the name Orchard Park High School?
Yes.
Okay. And good football there. Good.
We do. Yeah. No, we've had a couple guys that have played in a bunch of guys have played in the NFL. A couple guys have played in the CFL. One was the most recent one was a guy named Ben Holmes. Ben was a backup for the Charlotte Argonauts when they won the Grey Cup a couple of years ago. So
and the reason I mentioned teaching is because you were very careful with your words there with when you said shenanigans. Different era, completely different era, but that was a pretty high-spirited bunch, I would say.
It was a group that enjoyed doing things together for sure. It was a fun group. Again, the training camp, the veteran room was always fun. After the afternoon practice, to kind of go there, unwind a little bit before dinner, and then the evening meetings was fun. But those older guys really made you feel like you're part of the group. Whether it didn't matter who you were. There were some good characters on that group.
A lot of colorful guys though too on that group as well, right?
Yeah, Ozzy used to say we all had bubbles, right? We were all little bubbles, and we all just kind of figured it out. We all had our own little unique personalities, but we fit. We all fit, which was fun.
The state you've been to this new stadium, it faces a different way. Do you think about, as I say, I often conflate 1998 and 99 because those two teams could have been back-to-back Grey Cup champions, and each time you got into the final because of something against Montreal, both times breaking their hearts when they looked like both times that they had the game won. As we mentioned the 99 Joe Hagan's catch over Baron Miles, but in 98, you mentioned Ozzy. Stadium's facing the other way. Now it's a bit of a wind tunnel. The wind is either in your face or again. But that was a swirling. Can you maybe talk about that? And I'll remind people, Paul Osbaldiston kicked a 54-yard field goal with an impossible wind coming up and over, and he was a meteorologist, right? He was an amateur meteorologist.
He really knew everything about wind and direction, the timing of the wind. When we'd play out west, he would know which direction to go because the wind was going to stop, and he really was. Ozzy really knew, but that was his craft. That's why he played as long as he did. He really brought a lot of that. That 98 game, we thought we had it won. Montreal scores late. They kick off. I think Ronnie ran the ball back a little bit. Might have run a play or two to a pass to Darren, a run to Ronnie, and we're 50 at the 50-yard line or wherever we were, and Ozzy came out and just let it rip, and it was probably my favorite play of football, that play. So just the emotion of it, you thinking the game was oh shoot, we're not going to win this, and then he just comes out with a confident swoop, through it goes, and it was a really special moment for sure.
I think anybody who was there gets a chill even just hearing you talk about that. And that's, probably one of the most iconic photographs that Hamilton Spectator ever ran, behind the year of 72, Garney Henley holding up, and Angelo Mosca holding up
the Grey Cup.
Holding up the Grey Cup. The next one is the Ticats streaming off the field or off the bench and led by Rob Hitchcock, a Hamilton guy. With that chiseled face of his, that sort of very chiseled hard rock face, just loaded with tears. That's one of my favorite photos of all time.
Yeah, that was a great picture of Rob with his, of course he had his mouth wide open, and we had fun with his picture for the next
long time, right?
Yeah, we did.
Well, listen, Dave, I want to thank you very much. Is there anything you're particularly looking forward to for opening day here? At least the home opener here.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I mean, it's an exciting time of year, and everyone, Hamilton's, there's a lot of optimism for the year. I think Scott will do a great job, with O running the whole organization, and Scott being the head coach. It's a great fit. It's about people, and they've got. It sounds like they're getting good people in place, and I know that working with Orlando and obviously knowing Scott. They've got two really good people in place, and I don't know a lot of the guys in the team, but it's funny how close you are to winning and how close you are to losing. And Ozzy always used to say, "Be hot and healthy at the end," and they can get their bumps out early and kind of have it ready to roll kind of as the season goes. But the city was always great for us. They always treated us well, and the city were passionate fans, and so the guys that are there, sometimes you underappreciate that when you're in the moment, but know that there's a lot of people in Hamilton that care for you.
We'll hear from more of the 99 team all this week, and thanks for listening and watching, and tune into Thursday's episode when we'll talk with defensive linemen Mike Campbell and Mike Philbrick, the two very outspoken Mikes who starred on that 99 Cup winning side. This has been Ticats Today, and I'm Steve Milton.
This has been Ticats Today with Steve Milton. Catch it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.